Hey there. I got the question recently in terms of communication and preparing for a communication, whether having a script or winging it is better. And so I want to talk a little bit about both sides and what's in between. I think a lot of times people think they need to script things out, word for word, figure it out. And sometimes that comes because we're not confident in our voice, we're not confident in our message, and we don't feel like we could rely on our own thoughts, communication, organization. And so in some ways, that can be highly valuable to script things out, to think about the things you want to say. Here's the challenge. A lot of times it turns into us just being a little bit more robotic, whether we're reading the script or whether we are trying to remember the script. And here's the problem: you forget one word, all of a sudden everything gets jumbled up in your mind. You're trying to figure it out, and it doesn't really look like you're just having a conversation. And that's one small tip on communication: is the the most engaging kind of communication is when we can be ourselves, relaxed, and what I say is conversational. It's like when you're having a conversation with a friend and you're at ease and you're in the flow and you're just communicating the way you naturally, authentically, and in a relaxed way can deliver effective communication with somebody. What I've seen so many times in years and years and years of working with people is when the camera goes on or the lights go on or it's showtime for a presentation, it's almost like we lose that relaxed, authentic nature and we go into presentation mode. And it becomes a little bit different, a little bit more awkward sometimes and inauthentic. And when that happens, we lose the actual engagement with our audience. And sometimes we get really good. We get really good at presenting. We get really good at delivering a message. And that's important. But it's the mix of also being able to be relaxed, authentic, and natural as well. So on the other end of this spectrum, if we go scripted or we go complete winging it, now winging it is I'm going to figure it out on the fly, and I may lose some of the intentionality that I really want. And certainly if you're at the beginning of your journey, I'd say you don't want to script it. You might want to write it out. And then there's a middle ground where it's not completely winging it. Unless you're just a natural communicator and that's how you want to do it and figure it out, that works. But I know when I started giving speeches and when I started giving presentations and all these different things, I would map out a lot of the words, but then it became more I needed to remember the outline of things, the order of things. And then I would do a bunch of iterations and practice sessions to get the talk tracks down. And sometimes I was remembering specific messages. Other times it was I've got an outline and I'm going to remember the outline, and then I'm going to do a bunch of takes to get the words that come naturally for me. And then when it's time to actually give the speech or give the presentation, I don't have to remember every single word, but I know the sequence, I know the flow, and I know that I've done this enough times that I'm going to find the words that fit in the moment to fill in the gaps, to fill in the information. And when you do this enough times and you prepare for enough messages, all of a sudden, and that's what's happening right now, literally in this video. I didn't plan any of this, but I've almost got the wiring inside my head that says, where did we start? What points of emphasis have we gone through? Where do we need to get to? What's the conclusion of all of this? But I can now do it literally on the fly. And so where do we start out? And these are some of the components. Once you get into the flow and you understand structure, it's, hey, I'm going to tell them what I'm going to tell them. Then I tell them the stuff. And then I tell them what I told them. Like, it's almost the conclusion wraps up where we started and brings it all together. So where did we start this out? It said, I said at the beginning, if you're starting out, do you need to do it by a script, or do you need to wing it, or is it somewhere in between? And so we talked about script is good, but it also can trip you up. So I actually recommend against the script. Winging it, if you're a natural and you don't really need to worry about it and you do pretty good, go ahead and wing it. I think there's a middle ground where it's, what do I want to convey? How do I want to convey it? and then practice it a bunch of times. Get the structure, get the flow locked in, get yourself in a comfort zone where you know you can fill in the gaps, and you've done it enough times so that when the heat is on, so to speak, when the camera's on, or when the audience is in front of you, you're going to be a lot more at ease because you're at command of the message. And then over time, you do this enough times, you speak in front of enough audiences, you give enough presentations, all of a sudden it becomes second nature, like riding a bike. Initially, I got to learn balance. Initially, I got to learn speed. Initially, I got to learn how to brake. I got to do all these things. It's like driving a car. But after you've done it over and over and over and over again, all of a sudden, it's like, I don't even think about that stuff anymore. I even, don't even think about the message that I'm conveying. And I got some feedback one time a while back, and it's good feedback. He said, David, you are excellent at winging it. You can take a topic, give a communication. He said, where I want to challenge you, and it's still a challenge for me today, is you could be even more impactful if you got a little bit more intentional with the wording, with the way that you deliver it, with the structure. Because I know all this stuff, I can teach all this stuff, but a lot of times I like to wing it rather than get a little bit more intentional with it. So that's my own journey, but it's an iteration. It's another step. I watch this video, I see how it went, and I look to improve it each time. Maybe I could be a little bit more prepared. Maybe you could be a little bit more prepared. Maybe you need to be less prepared and figure out how to actually get good at winging it. And that's something I'll talk about in another video, is the value of being able to improv. I took years of improvisational comedy classes where there was no script. It was in the moment, creativity, drop into a character, and then play as if you are that character, and just read the room, read the scene, and act naturally and react naturally to whatever is thrown your way. And sometimes that's important skill as well. We can figure out the functional mechanics, but then when there's curveballs, then when there's other stuff that comes into the mix, are we flexible and creative enough in the moment that we can figure it out? We can improvise. We can kind of adjust to the scenario. We'll talk about that in another episode, another version of this. But if I'm wrapping this up, it's rip the Band-Aid off. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be fully scripted. It doesn't need to be completely wrong. But think about what you want to talk about, and then just do it over and over and over again. Eventually, you figure out what your flow is. You figure out what works for you. But you won't figure anything out if you don't hit the record button, if you don't jump into the pool, if you don't do the thing. So get out there, do the thing. Hopefully this is helpful. Talk soon.